without literally cutting things up. In other words, I learned that lingo, that sound, that kind of rhythm, perhaps, from Burroughs and other people who were doing that at that time.
When you write like that, it means there's no sentences at all. It's just word, 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 or
No, it's sentences and cut up words and words that are fragmented. I mean, I do everything you can imagine. Some things appear to be very discursive, a normal syntax and so on, but then suddenly it turns around and goes backward. Or there'll be other texts that are just lists of words, apparently, although they are structured through sound techniques or other techniques. So it's a list of words, but it's not a list of words. It's also a form, a structure, a mirror structure or an inversion structure or something like that, or a sound structure, or a conceptual structure where the idea, perhaps, of the words is arranged in some particular way. In other words, I'm using language in a more plastic way than a essayistic way. Most American poetry is written basically as a kind of essay with a beginning and end, a beginning, a middle, and a conclusion. I don't write that way. Sometimes I write something that has the appearance of that. I mean, the ending of a poem is important to me. It has to feel like an ending, but it's not that essay structure. It's a fake essay. That's just a trick. It's not really.
Are your poems usually a specific length, or just all different? Do you have a certain length you feel comfortable with, or?
Well, I go from one line to dozens of lines. Mostly, they range from about 8 to 20 lines, something like that. There's a lot of material in that range. I've done a number of pieces that were quite long, went on many pages. But often those are in chunks, like stanzas. They break off in regular blocks, for example. Though I did one series of poems using a medieval Spanish romance form, which is the form used for narrative poems in medieval Spain. The poem of the Muse Cid is written in that, for example. And they are the most narrative stuff I've done in recent years, perhaps. Although you wouldn't think that perhaps at first on reading them, but they're written in that form with that concept in mind of sort of a lunatic narration. And then I translated those into Spanish using the Spanish verse form, which is an 8-syllable line, and published it in a bilingual edition.
There's one I wanted to ask you about. You volunteered as a poetry therapist. So what was that interesting?
Oh yeah, very interesting. This was back in the 80s, I think. Late 70s and into the 80s. I got involved with some people who were interested in poetry therapy, and we had a training program here in Columbus for poetry therapists. and I went through that, and also became one of the trainers for poetry therapists. It's kind of like art therapy, although there's different techniques you have to use because you're dealing with language and different things you have to be careful about. But I practiced that at the State Mental Hospital for a number of years with a group and with some individuals, and met them once a week, I believe it was, and we wrote poetry and dealt with it from this point of view as a therapeutic process. And I met some people who were writing some really interesting stuff. The first inclination of somebody who sits down to write a poem who's not used to writing poetry is they write a little rhymed versicle, flowers are blue, blah, 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 or something from a greeting card. You let them get that out of their system, and then you present them with some different approaches. Write a poem about yourself as if you were a house, for example. Or there's a slew of techniques like this, and that gets them out of that little versifying thing, and they will write something really personal, really unique, and surprise themselves, because when you write something, you get something out of a part of your mind that you're not conscious of often. I mean, I experience that every time I sit down to write myself. And you see it on paper and you can read it, and you can see a part of yourself that you didn't see before. And that's the point, basically, in a few words, of poetry therapy, to get that happening. It doesn't happen if they're writing greeting card verse. It only happens when they're getting out of that and doing this other stuff. You can't be, as a therapist, poetry therapist, you can't be analyzing this means that you have a problem with your father. You can't do that. That doesn't work. It turns them off. You have to let them do the work, let them see what's there. And that was fascinating, and it produced some really interesting work from a number of people that I knew for quite a while there at the hospital.
Does it helps them? I mean, the therapy?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Did you publish any of that stuff?
I was going to publish a book and was all set to do that at the hospital, but the hospital administration got cold feet about it because they were concerned with liability issues and privacy issues and things like that, so it didn't happen. But somewhere in my papers there is some of that material that I kept, and so it's there. If you're a patient in a mental hospital, there's privacy laws and so on, and all that came up, but that doesn't matter. It was the process that was important. In a few cases, especially after I'd gotten to know somebody and know their writing, I could see, for example, you always have to be watching out if somebody is maybe considering suicide or something. Mm-hmm. And there are a number of little cues for that you can pick up in somebody's work. Not specific things, not that they're saying, I want to kill myself. They don't say that. There are other kinds of changes that occur that might be a sign to watch out for this person. And I would tell the staff, keep an eye on her for a while. There might be something going on here. I didn't tell them specifically what it was, but So it's useful in that respect too. I mean,
Hmm.
it can save somebody's life.